Hello, I'm Lizzie and this is Reads, and welcome to New Year, new video where I'm going for a new me and trying to upload every day for the first week of 2023. Today we have my best books of the year. So, quick disclaimer, I've got to the end of this video, I filmed the end of the video and I was looking around at all of the books that I picked and I don't feel as enthused about them as I wanted to do for best books of the year. So I feel like this is to prelude sort of quite a few honourable mentions, books that I enjoyed but don't really feel like favourite books, and then 3 books towards the end which are my die-hard favourite books of the year, representing a few different series. But everything else has just been kind of good but not amazing. I feel like there's something else out there, like there's something I missed. I don't know if that's, it might be an indication of how my reading year went, in that I read a lot of good stuff but nothing that really blew me out of the water. So hopefully this reading year will be much better. But yeah, let's get into the books. As I'm trying to wrap up the 2022 reading year and move on to the 2023 reading year, I just thought I'd let you know before I start the best books, yes, my Christmas decorations are still up. They will be taken down tonight. Today is the 3rd of January. I just haven't had time and I need to film. But it's okay. They're going to get done. So you're just going to have to ignore my little penguin friends in the background. So, as you've seen, if you've watched the first 3 videos in this series, I had a bit of a rubbish reading year in terms of what I was reading and reading what I wanted to and making time for reading. But I did read so many books. Now, when I was looking at the books that I'd read in order to make a best books of the year, there were only a few really stand out. I wasn't fighting to knock any books off. I read a lot of good books and a lot of okay books. And mostly I read good and okay books, but nothing that... not many books that really blew me away and kept me thinking about them for months and months on end. I've got 8 books here to potentially talk to you about. Some of them encompass a sort of like wider selection of books. They sort of go into 3 categories. We have a romance, still a little selection of romances. We have a few unexpected selections, and we have the obvious. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to start with the romance. I have 3 picks here, and one of them represents 2 really. So the first book I'm going to talk to you about is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. Now obviously these aren't in any particular order, this isn't top 10, but this did get 4.75 stars. I read this for one of my exploring romance videos. I'll link the playlist down below. And this is about a woman called Stella who is autistic, and she feels like she is sort of unlucky in romance, and she feels like that is because she doesn't have like the right sexual experience. So she hires an escort and tries to get said escort to sort of teach her about sex and intimacy. Sorry, I just checked the blurb, and Stella does not have autism, she has Asperger's. But yeah, so she is trying to sort of hire this guy to convince her how to be in a relationship and maintain sex and intimacy in a good way, into what she perceives. And naturally this is a relationship between the 2 of them. It's very sweet, it's very wholesome, it's very funny. It also has its sexy moments as well. It's a very, very good, solid romance. Obviously it's very popular, it's a very popular series, but I really liked it and I thought it was really worth the hype. There was just a couple of comments throughout it which didn't sort of make it a 5-star for me, and the fact that one of the plot threads was super predictable but trying not to be predictable in my opinion. But I did really enjoy it and I was being a little bit critical when rating it anyway. Next we have one that might be a surprise. I suppose you could consider it a surprise. But that is You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry, another super popular romance. Emily Henry's romances are super popular, and I really liked beach read. And then I read You and Me on Vacation, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was so enjoyable, and it's one of the romances I enjoyed the most this year. So definitely, I'm really glad that I read that. You and Me on Vacation, if you didn't know, is also called People We Meet on Vacation. In America, I don't know why it has two separate titles, but it's about Poppy and Alex. Poppy and Alex, who have been best friends for 12 years. The first year they meet, they don't really like each other. The following year, they really, really like each other. They're best friends. And then over the course of 12 years, they go on many vacations. And there was one 2 years ago from the present day in the story in which they sort of fall out, and they haven't been on a vacation since. And this is about them sort of giving it one last try to be best friends again. And obviously it is a friends to lovers. I didn't think I liked friends to lovers before reading this, so apparently I do. In a year where I feel like not many books stood out to me, this one stood out to me across the whole year, so I really feel like it does stand up, and I did really enjoy it. So apparently all three of the romance books that I've picked are super, super popular ones. And the third pick that I'm going to talk about is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, but also this encapsulates Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, because I also read that, and that would be on this list 1000%. If I had the physical copy, I just thought I'd bring out One Last Stop to represent both of them. If you didn't know anything by Casey McQuiston, Red, White and Royal Blue is about the Prince of England and the first son of the United States of America, so the president's son, the first son of the United States of America, and their relationship. They keep their relationship secret because they are gay, and a few other mitigating factors, and I just thought it was an absolutely beautiful story. I loved it so much. It was so fun, it was so sweet, it was just the best story. It had every sort of element wrapped up into one, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I gave it 5 stars, one of my favourite books in the first half of the year, competed all throughout the year to be one of my favourite books of the year. And then I read One Last Stop. One Last Stop, I think I prefer Red, White and Royal Blue over One Last Stop because of one of the elements that's in One Last Stop. I loved One Last Stop. One Last Stop is about Jane and August meet on the subway, and they sort of have this very sexy, alluring relationship, but also very funny and sweet. A really good mixture in there, where they are keep meeting on the subway but never outside. They never meet anywhere else, and as it turns out that Jane is stuck on the subway. I think Jane turns out Jane is stuck on the subway. She's from the 1970s, and they sort of have this relationship that's a bit bizarre because it has this odd element where Jane is stuck on the subway. It makes it a very interesting story. However, I thought I wasn't going to like it that much because of that element, and it's not that I didn't like it that much because of that. It's just I preferred the interesting elements of Red, White and Royal Blue. So the how their situation is very interesting, being famous public figures in such prominent situations, opposed to the sort of odd magical sci-fi slight element to this, but still such a favourite. Was so compelled by this story, and read this. I was so sucked in. So I know that the first sort of few books that mentioned here are very, very popular ones, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles, and unfortunately I just really liked those books. I did read The Replacements by Shay Sanders earlier this year, and that was one of my favourite books of the year as well. This is about a woman who finds out her husband is cheating on her. So she is financially dependent on her husband. So she gets another job, and she tries to emancipate herself, separate herself, her identity from her ex-husband, and trying to divorce him. And She's the assistant for her boss, and her boss is a grumpy, strict, keeps going through assistants, and he has finally met his match in our main character. And this probably was one of my favourite romances of the entire year. I enjoyed it so much. And I think that it was so good. And I read another Shay Sanders at the end of the year as well. And I definitely think Shay Sanders is one that I'm going to keep reading from. I absolutely love both of her stories. Can the cars be quiet outside, please? Thank you. So that's another one on there, one that I just had to talk about. So that kind of wraps up the romance part of the TBR, or the contemporary romance part of the TBR. Next, I'm going to talk about ones that really surprised me this year. So these are two books that I definitely enjoyed. They got 5 stars from me this year, and I was very surprised to like them. So that's why they kind of made it on this list. They're kind of like honourable mentions before I go into the, naturally these are my favourite and potentially my favourite of the year. And that is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I read this in February, I think. I got the beautiful Fairy Loot edition, and that's the only reason I picked it up, because I had the Fairy Loot edition and it was pretty. I had no interest in it because I'd not read Caraval, and I had no idea what it was really about, but I picked it up for a reading vlog when I just wanted to read something quick and easy, and I enjoyed it so much. It was just a really fun and light read. Once Upon a Broken Heart is about Evangeline Fox. I believe the way you describe it is her sort of sweetheart, or the person she loves and believes that loves her back, gets engaged to her sister, and when they get engaged to her sister, she is so confused. She tries to speak to them and they sort of don't acknowledge that she is anything to them. They seem to be sort of almost possessed. So she goes to ask the Prince of Hearts for help, and in exchange he says she has to give him 3 kisses, and it's very interesting because the Prince of Hearts is known to be a bit of a trickster and very wicked, and what has she gotten herself into, and all the events sort of unfold from there. But it was just really fun, really enjoyable, very fast paced, and felt like just what I needed at the time, something very different. And I hadn't read much YA throughout the year, but this was definitely a favourite for me, and I did really enjoy it. Another one is a YA favourite that I wasn't expecting to love as much as I did, and that was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is so hyped. This is so hyped, and I think it's worth it. I cannot for the life of me get the words out to describe this book. It's about Pippa Fitzamoby, who is doing a school project based on a murder case from 5 years previous in her village, where a schoolgirl was accused of being killed by her boyfriend, and her boyfriend is now dead. I believe he committed suicide a few days later, and it's basically just her investigating that case because she believes that the person they say who killed the young girl isn't actually the killer. And it's very interesting. It's told in sort of a dossier format, so it has lots of interviews. You can't see them, but they're like interviews there, and she'll draw on a map, and you have like logs and things, which are made for very fast-paced reads. But these were also very good to listen to as audiobooks. I read the whole series this year. The third one wasn't my favourite, but I did really enjoy it. Now, although for the other books in this list, I really had to search into and think about what I was going to pick, the next set were completely obvious and standout favourites for the year. The next 2 books I'm going to talk about are in the same overarching series, and you will not be surprised to hear that these made it to my favourite books of the year, because if you've been around for any length of time, you know that I absolutely adore the From Blood and Ash series. So I've included The War of Two Queens by Jennifer L. Armentrout and A Light in the Flame by Jennifer L. Armentrout here as well. The War of Two Queens is the latest in the From Blood and Ash series, and A Light in the Flame is the latest in the Flesh and Fire series. The Flesh and Fire series is prequel to the From Blood and Ash series, and the way the From Blood and Ash series starts is with Poppy, and Poppy is a maiden and she cannot be seen, she cannot be touched, she cannot be looked upon, and she is destined to be ascended into she doesn't know what. You don't know what as the reader. She's due to be ascended, and the fate of the kingdom is tied into this ascension. And she and her bodyguard changes into Hawk, a royal guard who she's had her on for a while. She thinks he's very attractive. She's been watching him. She starts to let go a little bit more, and things sort of go from there. And that is so reductive to what the series is overall about. Everyone and their mother has been speaking about this or knows about it. It's not for everyone, but it is completely for me. It's like one of my favourite series of all time. I reread it all the time. I talk about it all the time. I'm not going to go into too far, but I love The War of Two Queens. I know a lot of people didn't like it, didn't like the thing that happened, which I don't know why people were surprised that it happened. It doesn't change anything, but it's fine. I'm not going to go too much into it. But yeah, I really loved it. It was definite 5 stars. And I really, really loved the Flesh and Fire series, which a prequel to that, following Nyktos and his consort. And Nyktos is the king of gods. And it goes into so much more information about the series and the backstory of the world, which is very complicated, so it is needed. Sometimes a little bit too complicated, but I will look past the flaws because I enjoy it so much and it's just so much fun. My favourite world to be in. Naturally, those two were going to be mentioned. I love the series. It's so they're auto 5 stars almost for me, and I love them. However, there is one thing that pipped it, and if we were to rank any of these books, a lot of them are sort of not top what I would consider normally to be top books of the year. Sort of had to dig around for this one a little bit, but this would 100% be the top spot, and Golden Fall by Robin Hobb, representing the entire realm of the Elderlings here, because my favourite of the year, if I was to list all of my favourite books of the year, they would all be, it would probably be 8 books Robin Hobb, 2 books Jennifer L. Armentrout, and that's it. But we're not doing that. We're going to have Golden Fall to represent the entire realm of the Elderlings series. I would include Mad Ship, I would include Ship of Magic, I would include Ship of Destiny, because I love the series so much. But if you don't know what Realm of the Elderlings is about, it starts with, in Assassin's Apprentice, Fitz is a young boy, and he is the bastard son of the king in waiting, and he is dropped off at court by his maternal grandfather, who doesn't want to have to feed or look after him anymore. And he says, look, here's your problem, now deal with it. So the bastard son goes to court, and he's trained to be an assassin. His father, he doesn't meet, and he goes into sort of hiding. He abdicates his place on the throne and goes into hiding because he's ashamed of what he's done, and siring a bastard, as he's supposed to be quite chivalrous. And Fitz grows up into be an assassin because his grandfather, the king, believes that the best thing for him to do is to keep your enemies close, because if Fitz ever tried to make a claim for the throne, and he was sort of angry with the crown, then that could go with some people. This series has lots of magic, in the sense that there's 2 different types of magic. There's skill magic and whip magic, magic with animals, magic with minds. It's all very interesting and very exciting. There are dragons in later series. It is just absolutely magical, and I love it so much, and it's one of my favourite books I've ever read. Golden Fall, I think, topped it this year for me. It was just the one I was so absorbed in and so obsessed with. So I definitely think I really rate that. And naturally, it would take up all 10 spots. So the rest of this is kind of honourable mentions. But yeah, looking back at this list, I'm not really infused. They're all books I enjoy, but I wouldn't say they're my favourite books. A lot of them wouldn't make it to favourite books of all time. A lot of them are just ones I really enjoyed this year. I didn't feel like I had a wide selection. I don't think it doesn't feel very representative of my reading tastes, to be honest. But we're moving on. This is just me telling you some favourite books. But I am going to go now and drink a cup of tea. Thank you so much for getting cozy with me in this video, and I will speak to you again soon. Goodbye.